The Galactic Concord station floated in the darkness of space like a massive metal flower, its petals made of docking bays and observation decks that welcomed ships from 1,000 different worlds. It was here that the great powers of the galaxy came to talk instead of fight. And it was here that humanity had spent 12 years proving themselves to be the friendliest and most agreeable species anyone had ever met. Ambassador Daniel Harper walked through the gleaming corridors with his hands clasped behind his back and a warm smile on his face, nodding politely to every alien he passed. The tall insectoid Kethori received a slight bow. The muscular reptilian Velthry got a friendly wave. And even the suspicious amphibian Mordith were greeted with genuine warmth that made them uncomfortable in ways they could not explain. Ambassador Harper called a voice from behind, and Daniel turned to see his security chief approaching with measured steps. Commander Lisa Warren was a woman of average height with short brown hair and eyes that seemed to notice everything while revealing nothing. She wore the standard diplomatic security uniform, which most alien species considered purely ceremonial since humans were known to be a peaceful race that preferred talking over fighting. Commander Warren. "Good morning," Daniel said with that ever-present smile that had become his trademark throughout the station. "The council session begins in 1 hour, sir." The Velthry delegation arrived early, and they seemed agitated. Daniel nodded slowly. His expression remained pleasant despite the concern in his security chief's voice. The Velthry had been pushing for territorial expansion for months now, and their latest demands included 3 star systems that sat dangerously close to human colonial space. "Let them be agitated," Daniel replied calmly. "Agitation leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to opportunities for understanding." Lisa Warren said nothing, but something flickered in her eyes that might have been doubt, or might have been something else entirely. She had served with Ambassador Harper for 5 years, and she had learned that his gentle words often carried meanings that only revealed themselves. Later, the council chamber was a massive circular room with seats, arranged in tiers that rose toward a domed ceiling painted with stars from every member species' home system. Earth's sun was there too, small and yellow and unremarkable, among the giants and the binaries and the ancient red dwarfs that had watched civilizations rise and fall. Daniel took his seat in the human section, flanked by Lisa Warren and cultural attached Kevin Brooks, a cheerful man who seemed more interested in collecting alien recipes than participating in galactic politics. At least that was what everyone believed about him. The Velthry delegation entered with heavy footsteps and barely concealed contempt. Their leader, Warlord Sithrak, was a massive reptilian creature, covered in green scales and ceremonial scars that told the story of 100 victories in combat. He looked at the human delegation the way a predator looks at something too small to be worth eating. "The Dominion grows tired of endless negotiations," Sithrak announced, his translator device converting his hissing speech into flat galactic standard. "We have made our demands clear, and yet the humans continue to delay with their smiles and their compromises." Daniel rose from his seat with the unhurried grace of someone who had all the time in the universe. And when he spoke, his voice carried the same warmth it always did. "Honored Warlord, the systems you claim have been home to human colonists for 8 years. They have built farms and schools and hospitals there. Surely we can find an arrangement that respects both your expansion needs and their established lives." Sithrak's eyes narrowed, and several delegates from other species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Velthry were known for their aggression, and many wondered why the humans continued to negotiate instead of simply surrendering or fighting. "You speak of farms and schools," Sithrak growled. "These are the concerns of prey animals, not of a species worthy of respect in this galaxy. Perhaps humanity should accept its place in the natural order." A ripple of tension passed through the chamber. Such direct insults were rare even in heated diplomatic sessions. and many expected the human ambassador to show some sign of anger or fear. Daniel Harper simply smiled. Every species finds its place in time. Honored Warlord, I suggest we adjourn for today and continue our discussions tomorrow when tempers have cooled. The dismissal was so gentle that it took Sithrak a moment to realize he had been dismissed at all. And by then, Daniel was already walking toward the exit with his small delegation following behind. The Velthari warlord's claws scraped against his chair in frustration. But the session was over in the observation gallery above the council chamber. An elderly Kethari named Elder Verthan watched the humans depart with an expression that his fellow observers could not read. He had spent 40 years studying the species of the galaxy, and he had spent the last decade focused almost entirely on the newcomers from the small yellow sun. They are strange creatures, commented a young Kethari beside him, so soft and accommodating. One wonders how they survived on their home world at all. Verthan made a clicking sound that served as laughter among his kind. I have read their history, young one. Their home world is what we classify as a death world, covered in predators and poisons and natural disasters that would end most species before they began. And yet humans did not merely survive there. What did they do? The elder's multifaceted eyes glittered with something that might have been admiration or might have been fear. They conquered it. Every predator on that world either serves humanity now or hides from them. They hunted creatures 10 times their size for sport. They domesticated wolves and turned them into loyal companions. They spread across every environment their planet offered, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. And they thrived everywhere. The young Kethari looked down at the departing humans with new uncertainty. Then why do they act so peaceful? That, Verthan replied quietly, is the question that keeps me awake at night. In his private quarters aboard the station, Daniel Harper stood before a secured communication screen as his smile finally faded. The message he had received was encrypted with codes that officially did not exist, sent through channels that the galactic community did not know humans possessed. The Velthari fleet is mobilizing, reported the voice on the other end. Intelligence suggests they plan to strike New Haven Colony within 72 hours. They believe we will not resist. Daniel was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried none of the warmth that the galaxy had come to expect from him. They believe wrong. Activate Protocol 17 and inform Admiral Mitchell that her fleet should begin final preparations. And Commander Warren. Lisa Warren stepped out of the shadows where she had been standing motionless. Sir, it seems our friends have made their choice. Let us hope they do not regret it too deeply. The commander nodded once, and something changed in her bearing. Something subtle that transformed her from a ceremonial guard into something far more dangerous. The mask was beginning to slip. The colony world of New Haven was beautiful in the morning light, with golden fields stretching toward purple mountains and 2 small moons hanging in a pale blue sky. It was the kind of world that made humans feel like they had found a second home among the stars. And 12,000 colonists had built their lives there over 8 years of hard work. And Hope Dr. Amanda Price stood on her porch watching her 2 children play in the yard while she sipped her morning coffee. She was a xenobiologist who had come to New Haven to study the native wildlife. But she had stayed because the community had become her family and the land had become her heart. She did not know that Velthari warships were already entering the system. The attack came without warning, as attacks from the Velthari always did. They believed in overwhelming force and swift victory, and they expected the soft humans to surrender the moment plasma fire began raining from the sky. They were wrong. The first explosions hit the eastern settlement, and Amanda grabbed her children and ran for the community shelter that every colony was required to build. Around her, other colonists were doing the same. But there was something different about the way they moved. Something organized and purposeful that the Velthari had not anticipated. All colonists. This is Mayor Chun. crackled the emergency broadcast system. Protocol Homestead is now active. You know what to do. Amanda did know. Every colonist did, because every human colony practiced for this possibility, even though they hoped it would never come. She delivered her children to the shelter wardens and then moved to the armory section, where other adults were already gathering. The weapons were not military grade, but they were effective. Hunting rifles modified for alien physiology, industrial tools that could cut through Velthri armor, and emergency supplies that could sustain a resistance for weeks if necessary. Dr. Price called a voice, and Amanda turned to see Marcus Webb, the colony's head of security, handing her a tactical vest. You studied Velthri biology for 3 years. Where are their weak points? Amanda took the vest and felt something ancient stirring inside her. Something that her species had carried since their ancestors first picked up stones and sharpened sticks on a dangerous world full of things that wanted to eat them. The joints between their chest plates and their neck scales. She answered without hesitation. And their eyes are sensitive to bright light. Also, they cannot regulate body temperature well. So if you can trap them somewhere hot, they become sluggish. Marcus nodded and began relaying the information to the other defenders. And Amanda realized that she was no longer just a scientist. She was what her ancestors had always been when their homes were threatened. The Velthri ground forces landed expecting terrified civilians begging for mercy. Instead, they found empty streets and silence. And silence made them nervous in ways they did not understand. The first squad entered the main settlement cautiously, their weapons raised and their scales rippling with anticipation of easy prey. They did not see the tripwires connected to fertilizer explosives, and 3 of them died before they even knew they were in danger from the windows of seemingly abandoned buildings. Colonists opened fire with weapons that should not have been able to pierce Velthri armor. But the shots were aimed at joints and eyes and the soft tissue beneath neck scales, exactly where the armor was weakest. What is happening? Demanded squad leader Kreth into his communicator. These are farmers. They should be running. But the humans were not running. They were hunting. Amanda Price found herself face to face with a Velthri soldier who had broken into the shelter looking for easy captives. He was 3 times her size and covered in scales that could stop most projectiles, and he looked at her with contempt as he raised his weapon. He never got the chance to fire. Amanda moved faster than he expected, faster than any prey animal should move. And the fire axe she had grabbed from the emergency station bit deep into the joint between his shoulder and chest plate. The Velthri screamed and tried to grab her, but she was already moving, already striking again. And when 2 more soldiers rushed in to help their comrade, they found a human woman covered in alien blood, standing over 3 bodies with an axe in her hands and absolutely no fear in her eyes. The children are behind me, Amanda said quietly, though they could not understand her. You will not touch them. Across the galaxy, at the Concord station, a formal dinner was underway when Ambassador Daniel Harper received a message on his personal device. Every species present watched him read it. Expecting panic or tears or desperate pleas for assistance, Daniel set down his fork with careful precision and rose from his seat. "Excuse me," he said with perfect calm. "It seems the Velthri Dominion has decided to attack one of our colonies. I need to make some arrangements." Warlord Sithrak, who was present at the dinner, laughed loudly. "So the prey finally understands its place. Perhaps now you will agree to our terms, Ambassador, before more of your soft colonists suffer." Daniel looked at the warlord, and something in his expression made several nearby delegates step backward. His smile was gone, and what remained was something cold and patient and utterly without mercy. Commander Warren, Lisa Warren, appeared at his side, and she was different now. Her posture had shifted, her eyes had hardened, and her hand rested on a sidearm that everyone had assumed was ceremonial. Contact Admiral Mitchell, Daniel said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room. Tell her that Protocol 17 is confirmed, and she may proceed at her discretion. Also inform Captain Cole that his ship should make best speed to New Haven. Already done, sir, Lisa replied. The fleet has been in position for 6 days. The dinner guests stared in confusion. 6 days meant the humans had anticipated this attack, had prepared for it, had positioned military assets while their ambassador smiled and negotiated and pretended to be weak. Elder Vathan rose from his seat with a sound that might have been respect or might have been warning. I told you, he said to the assembled delegates. I told you all. You looked at their smiles and saw prey, but you should have looked at their history. What history? Demanded a Mordith diplomat, Vathan's ancient eyes fixed on the Velthari warlord, who was beginning to look less confident. They nearly destroyed themselves 3 generations ago. They split atoms and almost burned their world to ash in their wars against each other. They killed millions of their own kind before they finally chose peace. He paused, letting that sink in. They did not become peaceful because they were weak. They became peaceful because they learned exactly how dangerous they were, and they decided they did not want to be that anymore. But the capability never left them. Sithrak's scales had gone pale. You were saying they could have fought us at any time. I am saying, Vathan replied quietly, that you have just attacked the children of the only species in known history that hunted their own apex predators to extinction for sport. And now they are coming for you? Daniel Harper was already gone, walking toward the communications center with Commander Warren at his side. The diplomatic mask had fallen, and what remained was something that the galaxy had never seen before. The hunt was about to begin. The Velthari fleet hung in space above New Haven like a swarm of metal predators. 40 warships bristling with weapons and filled with soldiers who had conquered a dozen worlds. Supreme Commander Kratos stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the planet below with satisfaction. The ground assault was taking longer than expected, but that was a minor inconvenience. Once reinforcements landed, the humans would break and surrender as all prey eventually did. Commander called his sensor officer. A human vessel has just entered the system. Kratos turned his massive head toward the tactical display and saw a single ship approaching. Small by Velthari standards and completely alone against his armada. One ship. He laughed. They send one ship to face 40. Truly, these creatures have no understanding of war. The vessel was called the Meridian, and its captain was a man named Nathan Cole, who had gray in his hair and scars on his hands from a war that humanity had fought against itself before most of the crew were born. He had seen what humans could do to each other, and he had hoped never to see it again, but hope was not the same as expectation. And Captain Cole had prepared for this moment his entire career. Open a channel to the Velthari flagship. He ordered. His communications officer nodded, and moments later the image of Supreme Commander Kratos appeared on the main screen. Grinning with too many teeth, little human ship, the Velthari commander mocked. Have you come to negotiate your species' surrender? I will accept nothing less than complete submission, Nathan. Cole looked at the alien commander with an expression that contained no fear, no anger, and no mercy. This is Captain Nathan Cole of the Earth defense vessel Meridian. I am broadcasting on all Velthari frequencies to deliver a formal warning. You have attacked a human colony and killed human civilians. You have one chance to withdraw from this system and return to Velthari space. If you do not, you will be destroyed. The bridge of the Velthari flagship erupted in laughter. 40 warships against one, and this human was making threats. You amuse me, Captain, Kratos replied, but I grow tired of human arrogance. Weapons officer, destroy that ship and let us finish our conquest. The Velthari weapons locked onto the Meridian, but the human ship did not move, did not flee. did not even attempt evasive maneuvers. It simply waited, and something about that stillness made several Velthari officers uncomfortable. "Sir," the sensor officer said slowly, "I am detecting energy signatures behind the planet's moon." Before Krathos could respond, the darkness lit up with the dry flares of 30 human warships emerging from behind New Haven's largest moon. They moved in perfect formation with weapons already charged and targeting solutions already calculated, Admiral. Claire Mitchell stood on the bridge of her flagship with her hands behind her back and ice in her veins. Her crew called her the Ghost because enemies never saw her coming until it was too late. And today she intended to earn that name again. "All ships, this is Admiral Mitchell. The Velthari have refused our terms. Execute Protocol 17. The human fleet attacked without warning, without mercy, and without any of the formal declarations that Velthari military tradition demanded. There were no challenges to single combat, no opportunities for surrender negotiations, no pause for the enemy to prepare. There was only death. Swift and efficient and terrifying in its precision. The first volley of human missiles struck 6 Velthari ships before their shields could fully activate, tearing through armor and detonating in engine rooms and ammunition stores. The explosions lit up the darkness of space like new stars being born. "Impossible," Krathos screamed. "How did they get so close without our sensors detecting them?" The answer was one that the Velthari could not understand. For 6 days, Admiral Mitchell's fleet had hidden behind the moon with minimal life support and near-total system shutdown. Her crews enduring cold and discomfort and cramped conditions, without complaint because humans had evolved on a world where patience meant survival. Their ancestors had tracked prey for days across open plains, never stopping, never resting, until the target collapsed from exhaustion. That same patience lived in every human heart, waiting to be called upon. Captain Cole's Meridian dove into the Velthari formation with a speed that should have been impossible for a ship its size. It weaved between enemy vessels, drawing fire and creating confusion while the heavier human warships picked off targets with surgical accuracy. "They are not fighting like prey," a Velthari officer shouted in confusion. "They are fighting like pack hunters." That was exactly what they were doing. Human tactical doctrine was not based on honor or single combat or overwhelming force. It was based on millions of years of hunting in groups, separating the weak from the herd, and bringing down prey much larger than themselves through cooperation and persistence. The Velthari fleet began to panic. Ships broke formation trying to engage the faster human vessels, and each one that separated became a target for concentrated fire from multiple directions at the Concord station. Delegates from every species watched the battle unfold on massive view screens. They had expected the humans to lose, to surrender, to do anything except what they were actually doing. Elder Verdan stood near the front of the observation gallery, his ancient eyes reflecting the light of distant explosions. "Do you see now?" he asked the stunned crowd. "Do you understand what you have been dealing with all these years?" "They are destroying the Velthari," whispered a Morith ambassador. "They are actually winning against a fleet that outnumbers them." "The numbers mean nothing," Verthan replied. "The Velthari fight as individuals seeking glory. The humans fight as a pack with a single purpose. This is not a battle. This is a hunt." Warlord Sithrak stood frozen near the back of the gallery, watching his people's mighty fleet being systematically taken apart by creatures he had dismissed as prey. "How?" he managed to say. "How is this possible?" Ambassador Daniel Harper appeared beside him, and his voice was quiet, but carried clearly in the stunned silence. "We did not become diplomats because we could not fight, Warlord. We became diplomats because we remembered what happened the last time we fought without restraint. 70 million of our own people died in our last great war, not from primitive weapons, but from fire that we pulled from the hearts of atoms." He turned to face the Velthari directly. We chose peace because we were afraid of ourselves, not because we were afraid of you. In space above New Haven, the battle reached its conclusion. Supreme Commander Kratos watched in horror as his flagship became surrounded by human vessels, all of them targeting his bridge with weapons fully charged. Surrender. Captain Cole's voice came through the communication system. And your surviving crews will be treated with mercy. Continue fighting, and none of you will leave this system alive. Kratos looked at his tactical display. Of his 40 warships, 18 remained, and most of those were damaged. Human losses were 3 vessels, all of them destroyed while protecting damaged allies. The prey had become the predator. And the Valkyrie Supreme Commander finally understood what humans truly were. We surrender, he said. And the words tasted like ash in his mouth. The human fleet did not celebrate. They simply began rescue operations for Valkyrie survivors floating in the debris, pulling enemies from the wreckage and treating their wounds with the same care they would show their own people. Somehow, that mercy was more terrifying than any cruelty could have been. 1 year had passed since the Battle of New Haven, and the galaxy was a different place. The news of what humans truly were had spread to every inhabited world, every station, every ship that traveled between the stars. And nothing would ever be quite the same again. Ambassador Daniel Harper walked through the corridors of the Galactic Concord station as he had done 1,000 times before. But now the reactions of those he passed were different. The tall Kethari bowed with genuine respect. The suspicious Mordith gave him wide berth. And even the youngest species treated him with the careful courtesy reserved for those who had proven themselves dangerous. He still smiled warmly at everyone he met, because that was who he chose to be. The mask and the face had become the same thing over the years, and he saw no reason to change that. Now Commander Lisa Warren walked beside him as she always did. Though her role had evolved in the past year, she was no longer just his security chief. She was the head of a new training program that taught human diplomats how to be both negotiators and warriors. Because the galaxy now understood that every human was potentially both. The Korath delegation has accepted our trade proposal, she reported, and the Mordith are requesting a formal alliance. Also, the Kethari have sent another cultural exchange request. Elder Verthan specifically asked if you would consider visiting their home world. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. The Kethari had become humanity's closest friends in the past year, drawn together by their shared appreciation for species that were more complicated than they appeared. Accept the trade proposal and the alliance request. Tell Elder Verthan that I would be honored to visit as soon as my schedule permits. They passed a group of young diplomats from various species attending a workshop on human negotiation techniques. The class had been started at the request of several governments who wanted to understand how humans had managed to be so successful at both peace and war. Kevin Brooks, the cultural attach who had always seemed more interested in food than politics, was leading the workshop with a relaxed confidence that would have surprised anyone who met him before last year. The galaxy had learned that even the most harmless-seeming humans had hidden depths. The real secret, Kevin was telling his students as Daniel passed, is that we always assume the best about others until they prove us wrong. But we also prepare for the worst, just in case. Hope is not the same as naivety. The council chamber was fuller than Daniel had ever seen it when he entered for the afternoon session. The recent emergence of a new aggressive species, called the Morthic Collective, had every government on edge, and many were looking to humanity for guidance. The Morthic have refused all diplomatic overtures, reported the Korath representative. They claim that peaceful species are simply prey waiting to be harvested. They remind me of someone. Several delegates glanced at the Valkyrie section, where Warlord Sithrak sat in silence. The past year had changed him in ways that surprised everyone, including himself. He rose slowly and addressed the council. I recognized their words because they were my words not long ago. I looked at the galaxy and saw only strength and weakness, predator and prey. It took humans to show me that there was another way. He turned to face the human delegation directly. My people have spent the past year learning from our defeat. We have studied human history, their culture, their philosophy of chosen restraint. We do not yet fully understand how they do it, but we are trying to learn. Daniel Harper rose and looked around the chamber at faces that represented dozens of species, hundreds of worlds, billions of lives, all watching to see what humanity would do. The Morphic Collective threatens us all, he said calmly, and they will not respond to diplomacy alone. We have tried, but that does not mean we must become like them to defeat them. He activated a display showing the known Morphic territory and their recent expansion patterns. Humanity will contribute to a joint defense force if other species are willing to stand with us. We will share our tactical knowledge and our military technology, but we will also insist on rules of engagement that protect civilians and offer enemies chances to surrender. Why? Demanded a delegate from a species that Daniel did not recognize. If the Morphics show no mercy, why should we? It was Elder Verthan who answered, rising from his seat with the slow dignity of his advanced age, because mercy is not a weakness. It is a choice that only the truly strong can afford to make. The humans understand this better than any species I have ever studied. They could have destroyed the Velthari completely, but instead they offered terms that allowed healing instead of continuing hatred. He looked at Daniel with something that had grown beyond academic interest into genuine friendship. That is what makes them so remarkable, and so frightening to those who cannot understand. They are apex predators who chose to become gardeners, warriors who chose to become healers, killers who chose to become diplomats. The delegate considered this, and then sat down without further objection after the session ended. Daniel found himself standing at a large observation window, watching ships come and go from the station. Admiral Claire Mitchell appeared beside him, still in uniform, despite being offered multiple promotions to desk positions that she had all declined. Captain Nathan Cole joined them moments later, his gray hair a little grayer after a year of helping rebuild what war had broken. The galaxy looks at us differently now, Cole observed quietly. I am not sure if that is good or bad. It is both, Daniel replied. They respect us more, but they also fear us more. Some will want to be our friends because they see our strength. Others will want to be our friends because they fear what we might do if they are not. Admiral Mitchell watched a Velthari transport dock at the station, its crew moving with none of the arrogance that had marked their species before New Haven. Sithrak's speech surprised me, she admitted. I did not expect them to actually learn from their defeat. People are capable of change, Daniel said. Species are capable of change. We proved it ourselves when we nearly destroyed our world and then chose to become something better. Why should we deny others the same possibility? They stood in comfortable silence for a while, three humans who had helped change the course of galactic history simply by being what they had always been. Dangerous creatures who chose gentleness. Predators who chose peace. Weapons that chose to become shields. What do you think will happen with the Morphic? Cole asked eventually. Daniel considered the question carefully before answering. We will give them every opportunity to choose peace. We will extend friendship and trade and cultural exchange. We will show them that there is another way to be strong. His expression hardened slightly. And if they refuse, if they force our hand as the Velthari did, then we will remind them what we are. We will hope it never comes to that, but we will prepare for it anyway. That sounds like humanity in a nutshell. Mitchell observed. Daniel smiled, and this time the expression carried a weight of history and hope and hard-won wisdom. We are what we choose to be. Admiral, every day, every moment, We decide whether to be the predators that evolution made us or the peaceful species that we want to become. Most of the time, we choose peace. But we never forget how to hunt. He turned away from the window and began walking back toward his quarters, where another day of negotiations and relationship building awaited. The galaxy knows what we are now, he said over his shoulder. Perhaps that is for the best. Perhaps now they will understand that our kindness was never weakness. It was the greatest strength we possessed. The hardest thing we ever learned, and the most precious gift we have to offer. Commander Warren fell into step beside him, as she always did. Guardian and friend and reminder of the warriors that humans could become when everything they loved was threatened. What if they never understand? She asked quietly. Daniel Harper, ambassador of Earth, diplomat and predator and peaceful man by choice rather than nature, considered the question as they walked together through corridors full of beings who finally saw humanity clearly. Then we will keep trying to show them. He answered, because that is what we do. We persist. We adapt. We never give up. And eventually, somehow, we always find a way. The galaxy stretched out beyond the station's walls, vast and ancient and full of species who were only beginning to understand the strange creatures from the small yellow sun. Some would become friends, some would become enemies, and some, like the Velthari, would become something unexpected, but all of them would remember the day they realized that humans were never prey. They were simply predators who had learned how to smile. The debris field above New Haven stretched for thousands of kilometers, a graveyard of Velthari ambition marked by twisted metal and frozen bodies and the silence of defeat. Human rescue ships moved through the wreckage with careful precision, their crews pulling survivors from crippled vessels, without regard for the scales and claws that had tried to kill them hours before. Captain Nathan Cole stood in the medical bay of the Meridian, watching human doctors treat Velthari wounded, and he felt the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. His grandfather had told him stories about wars on Earth, where enemies became brothers after the fighting stopped. And now he was seeing that tradition continue among the stars. Supreme Commander Kratos was brought before him in restraints, though the alien commander barely seemed to notice. His eyes were empty, his scales had faded to a dull gray, and his posture held none of the arrogance that had defined him before the battle. "Why?" Kratos asked quietly. "Why do you save us after we tried to destroy you?" Cole considered the question for a long moment before answering. "Because killing is easy, Commander. Any species can learn to kill. But choosing not to kill when you have every right to, that is something harder. We learned that lesson the difficult way, through wars that nearly ended us. And we swore we would never forget it." "You are strange creatures," Kratos replied. "I do not understand you at all." "Good," Cole said with something that might have been a smile. "That means you might actually learn something." At the Galactic Concord Station, an emergency session of the full council had been called, and every species was represented. The news of the battle had spread across the galaxy at faster than light speed, and everyone wanted to understand how a minor, peaceful species had just defeated one of the most feared military powers in known space. Ambassador Daniel Harper entered the council chamber with Commander Lisa Warren at his side, and the silence that greeted him was very different from the polite disinterest the humans usually received. Now there was fear and respect, and the kind of careful attention that species reserved for genuine threats. He took his place at the human delegation's seat and looked around the chamber at faces that seemed to be seeing him for the first time. "Thank you all for gathering on such short notice," Daniel began, his voice carrying the same warmth it always had, though now everyone heard it differently. "I know many of you have questions about recent events, and I believe you deserve honest answers." He pressed a control on his podium, and holographic images appeared in the center of the chamber. They showed Earth, beautiful and blue, but marked with scars visible from orbit. These are the lasting wounds of our last global conflict, a war that ended over a century ago. The dark patches you see are places where nuclear weapons were used, where nothing grew for decades, where millions of our people died in fires that we created ourselves. The delegates stared in shocked silence. Nuclear weapons were known to the galaxy, but no species had ever used them on their own home world. The concept was considered too insane to contemplate. We did not become a peaceful species by choice, Daniel continued. We became peaceful because we looked at what we had done to each other and realized that if we did not change, there would be no humanity left to change. Our diplomacy, our trade networks, our cultural exchanges, all of these were born from the ashes of our own near extinction. He let that sink in before continuing. We came to the galactic community hoping to find something better, hoping that other species had found ways to live together without the violence that nearly destroyed us. And for 12 years, we believed that peaceful participation was the path forward. His expression hardened slightly, but we never forgot what we were. We never dismantled our military capacity. We simply hoped we would never need to use it again. Elder Varthan rose from his seat in the Keth-Ari section. Ambassador Harper, I have studied your species extensively, and I believe the Council would benefit from some additional context. May I speak? Daniel nodded, and the ancient Keth-Ari activated his own holographic display, showing images from Earth's history that made several delegates physically recoil. Humans evolved on a death world, Varthan explained. A planet filled with predators and poisons and natural disasters that would have ended most species. They survived not by being stronger or faster than their environment, but by being more persistent, more adaptable, and more cooperative than anything else on their world. He showed images of early humans hunting mammoths, of wolves being domesticated, of every continent on Earth bearing signs of human habitation. They did not merely survive their world. They conquered it completely. Every apex predator on Earth now exists only because humans allow it. The ones that humans considered threats were hunted to extinction thousands of years ago. The images shifted to show human warfare through the ages, each era more destructive than the last. But the most remarkable thing about humans is not their capacity for violence, which is extraordinary. It is their capacity for restraint. They developed weapons that could end all life on their planet, used them twice, and then chose never to use them again. They created rules of warfare, protections for civilians, international laws to limit their own destructive potential. He turned to face the Velthari delegation, where Warlord Sithrak sat in humiliated silence. When you looked at humans and saw weakness, you were seeing the result of a species that fought against its own nature and won. Their kindness is not the absence of violence. It is the presence of discipline so powerful that it overcame millions of years of predatory instinct. Daniel Harper stepped forward again. The Velthari Dominion attacked our colony, killed our people, and forced us to remember what we are. I wish it had not happened, but I cannot undo it. What I can do is offer terms that might prevent this from happening again. He outlined the human demands: reparations for the damaged colony, a demilitarized zone between human and Velthari space, a formal apology, and guarantees of non-aggression for the future. Notably absent from the list was any territorial acquisition or demands for punishment, beyond what was necessary for peace. You could take much more, said a delegate from the neutral Korath Federation. You have defeated their fleet. You could demand systems, resources, even vassalage. Why do you not? Daniel was quiet for a moment before answering. Because we are tired of taking. We spent thousands of years taking from each other, from our world, from everything we touched. When we finally stopped, we discovered that giving was more sustainable. Trade has made us richer than conquest ever did. Friendship has made us safer than fear ever could. He looked directly at Warlord Sithrak. We do not want to rule you. We do not want to destroy you. We simply want you to leave us alone and let us continue building the kind of civilization we always wished we had been." Sithrak rose slowly from his seat, and for a moment no one knew if he would attack or surrender. Then, slowly, he bowed his head in the traditional Velthari gesture of accepting defeat. "You have shown us something our culture lacks," he said quietly, "the strength to choose mercy from a position of power. Perhaps we have things to learn from prey after all." The word prey echoed through the chamber, but it no longer carried the same meaning it once had. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humans had never been prey. They had simply been predators who learned how to retract their claws. Daniel Harper smiled, and this time the expression reached his eyes. "We prefer the term friends, Warlord. Perhaps someday you will understand why." On New Haven, the colonists emerged from their shelters to find human soldiers helping rebuild what the Velthari had destroyed. Dr. Amanda Price held her children close and watched medical teams treating everyone who needed help. Regardless of species, Captain Cole walked among the colonists, personally thanking them for their resistance. And when he reached Amanda, he stopped and saluted. "The intelligence you provided about Velthari weak points saved a lot of lives, Doctor. You should be proud." Amanda looked at her children, safe and alive, because she had remembered what she was capable of when their lives were threatened. "I am just glad it is over," she said softly. "This part is over," Cole agreed. "But the galaxy knows who we are now. That changes everything." He was right. Nothing would ever be the same again.